I'm Chris Wallace. Hillary Clinton's successor in the Senate, Kirsten Gillibrand, has presidential ambitions of her own.
President Trump is tearing apart the moral fabric of this country.
Gillibrand taking on what she calls President Trump's war on women.
If he wants this war, he will have this war, and he will lose.
A fierce defender of choice.
Reproductive rights are human rights.
Medicare for all.
Healthcare must be a right, not a privilege.
And the fight against climate change.
We need to pass a Green New Deal.
But where does she stand now on issues she viewed differently in the past? And how does she set herself apart from the crowded Democratic field? Tonight, a town hall from Dubuque, Iowa.
Hope rises.
With New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand.
Fear loses.
As she brings her message to the national stage.
And brave wins.
Good evening. Live from the Myers Center at the University of Dubuque, home of the Spartans, and tonight's site of our Fox News Town Hall with New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Folks here have a lot of questions they want to ask, so let's get right to it. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Welcome to Dubuque. You know that they call this place the masterpiece on the Mississippi.
Amazing. Thank you for having me. Thank you, University of Dubuque. Thank you, Chris.
Ready to answer some questions?
I'm ready.
Good. First question from James Walgreens, who's a dentist here in Dubuque. James.
Hi. How do you plan on competing with Joe Biden with his name recognition? And do you think enough has been done to prevent the DNC from influencing the primary process with access to voter data files and funding and debate schedules and things like that that were used for a favored candidate last time in 2016?
So I'm going to play by the rules they set, and I think they'll do a fine job. But this is a marathon and not a sprint, and we're just beginning. And if you look at who the front runners were in any past presidential election and who winded up winning, they weren't the same one. At this stage, it's so early, and I'm just introducing myself to the voters, telling you why I'm running for president and what I want to do for this country, what my vision is for a better country that restores our democracy back to your hands, away from the special interests, get money out of politics, health care is a right, and a lot of other things that we're going to talk about tonight.
Terrific. Senator, you've got another question from Subi Banerjee. Subi?
Hello, Senator. Welcome to Dubuque. My question is that what would you do differently to reduce the gun violence and the deaths in America, where all the previous presidents, they tried but failed? More specifically, would your plans have prevented the senseless massacre that happened in Virginia Beach last Friday?
Well, thank you for asking that question, because I can tell you Americans are feeling ripped apart by the gun death we have seen year after year, month after month, children dying. We need to do something about it. And I think the most outrageous thing that's happened to our democracy is how much fear and division and hate has been spread. I think the NRA is the worst organization in this country for doing exactly that. They care more about their profits than the American people. They care more about selling guns to someone on the terror watch list, or someone with grave mental illness, or someone who has a violent criminal background. They're against universal background checks. They're even against ending the Violence Against Women's Act. So we need, as Americans, need to stand up to the greed and corruption of the NRA. And we know why. It's because of money in politics. Money in politics is the name of the game. It's why the first thing that I've done as a presidential candidate is put forth a very comprehensive platform for publicly funded elections, so that your voice is as loud as any Koch brothers, so that your voice is not drowned out by the hundreds of millions of dollars spent on negative campaigns for special interests across this country. And so I will do three things as president. First, I will make sure we have universal background checks. Second, I will make sure we ban the bump stocks, the large magazines, the assault rifles, the military-style weapons. I will make sure we have a federal anti-trafficking law. And once we get money out of politics, the NRA will end its chokehold on members of Congress who have no courage to stand up to them and do the right thing on behalf of their constituents and the American people.
Senator, if you want to join me over here, I want to follow up on that a little bit. I heard the 3 points you specifically made. Having said that, none of them would have prevented what happened in Virginia Beach. This gentleman, he didn't buy an assault weapon. He had 2 handguns. He bought them legally. So how do you prevent? I understand that all of your plans aren't going to stop all of them, but is there anything you could have done that would have stopped this terrible incident?
Yeah, stop being beholden to the NRA like President Trump is. He does President Trump's bidding. Remember, after the shooting in Las Vegas, he said, yeah, we're going to ban the bump stocks. Did he ban the bump stocks? No, because the NRA came crashing down and said, don't you dare do any restrictions on our guns around this country. It is such a false choice. The NRA is lying to the American people. It is not about the Second Amendment. It is about gun sales. Be very clear. If you are not supporting the Violence Against Women's Act, it's because you want to make sure an abuser who has a restraining order against him can buy a weapon. It is literally about greed and corruption and making sure the status quo says the same. Do not let them lie to you. The things that I told you, the 3 things I want to accomplish, almost all Americans support getting that done. Most NRA members support getting that done. So it's not about one gun death, Chris, because if it was, we would have done this long ago. We would have done something after the Sandy Hook shooting. We would have done something after the hundreds of gun deaths we've seen under President Trump and over the last decade. But Congress has no guts. They got no spine because they're bought and paid for.
I promise we'll get back to their questions in a moment, but I want to drill down on this. Your campaign slogan is "Brave wins."
Yep.
But when you were a congresswoman representing a conservative district in upstate New York, you took pretty conservative positions on guns and immigration. Once you became the senator for the entire liberal state of New York, you flipped and took much more liberal positions on guns and immigration. So how is that brave?
It's because I came from a district that was really rural. Second Amendment was important. Hunting was important. My mom, of course, she cooked the Thanksgiving turkey, but she also shot the Thanksgiving turkey. So I understand the importance of having a hunting culture and preserving our Second Amendment rights. And that's why I'm in the best position, Chris, to lead this country into a place where we can have common sense gun reform. I recognize people have different communities. Some communities are rural. Some communities have deep gun violence, gang violence, where children are dying. I've met a mother who sat on a park bench in Brooklyn whose 4-year-old got killed by a stray bullet. I have met parents and a whole school class whose friend, Nyasia, got hit by a stray bullet at a party with her friends. That has to stop. And I'm telling you, the only thing standing in the way is the NRA and the greed and corruption they have for gun manufacturers. They want gun sales over protection of people every time. They're unwilling to do the common sense things that most Americans want done, and it's because of the corruption in Washington. And that's why I'm going to stand up to the gun lobby. I'm going to stand up to the NRA. I'm going to stand up to the moneyed interests that decide things in Washington, and that's why we're going to have publicly funded elections and return our democracy into your hands. Our democracy needs to be fixed first, and it needs to be in your hands, not the people who are ultra wealthy and not the people who are on power.
One last follow here, though, because you have really called out the NRA. I think you said earlier that it's the worst organization in America. When you represented that upstate New York district, you boasted an A rating from the, let me finish, from the NRA, and you oppose gun controls. Now you boast an F rating from the NRA, and you support all the things you've done here, including a ban on assault weapons. It sounds a lot more like it's politics than principle, Senator.
No, 10 years ago is when I was a House member.
How do you explain the change?
just realizing that not every part of this country is like my rural upstate New York district. We have to look beyond our own backyard. We must care about others. This country used to believe in the golden rule. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Care about the least among us. And as an upstate congresswoman, I had an A rating by the NRA. And when it became senator, I had a proud F. I've had that proud F for 10 years, and I'm very delighted to have a proud F. Because the truth is, it wasn't good enough to care only about your backyard. You've got to care about communities across this country. And so, Chris, when I talk about this in red places and blue places and purple places, it is the same message. None of us support a 4-year-old dying on a bench in Brooklyn. None of us support what happened at Sandy Hook. None of us support what happened in Virginia Beach. That's the truth of it. And don't let the NRA stand and speak for you, because they don't. We don't want needless and senseless gun death in America.
You ought to stay up right there, because we have another question for you from the audience, from Marilyn Gorin. Marilyn.
Hi, Senator. Press coverage of the campaign favors the men over the women, even when the issue is women's concerns. What can you as a candidate, and all the candidates, including the men, do to make this a more fair playing field?
Could you say that a little more? In the election, you mean?
In the campaign.
Or in society?
No, I want women's voices heard. So.
Okay.
I think she means more in the campaign.
Right.
The idea that men are getting more attention than women.
Right.
So
correct?
That's up to us. We can lift up the voices that we support. If you like what I'm talking about, you can go to KirstenGillibrand.com and support my campaign. But what we can do is lift up the voices of the people that we want to see on the debate stage by supporting them, by following them, by asking our friends to support the candidates we like. But I share your value of women's voices. I have been leading on the issue of bringing women into the political sphere for a long time. I got my start in politics because of my grandmother, who loved politics, and that's what she did. She recognized 75 years ago that women had such a small say in public life. Most of the electeds were men, and the support staff were women. And so she organized women for 50 years. And over that time, they learned how to work on campaigns and get elected candidates that shared their values. And over time, you couldn't get elected in Albany without the blessing of my grandmother and her lady friends. So women's voices do matter to me, and always have. So I've been working on the grassroots for the past 7 years, raising money and lifting up women's voices, asking women to run for Congress. If they do, supporting their campaigns. And I've raised over $7 million just for women candidates, more than $1 million just for women of color. And so I share your view. And I think the best way to make sure that your voice is heard is support the candidates. And if you would like women candidates, we have 6 running for president. Just lift up their voices and ask your friends to support them too.
Senator, on the issue of gender, you've gotten some blowback from some of your fellow Democrats, as you well know, for being the first senator to call on Senator Al Franken, one of your colleagues then in the Senate, to resign. And what Democrats say now is that there was a rush to judgment, that there was no due process, there was no ethics committee, there was no distinction between really horrific crimes like Harvey Weinstein and sexual assault and allegations of, not to say acceptable, but less horrific things like alleged unwanted groping or touching. I guess the question is, do you still believe that Senator Franken needed to resign from the Senate?
Let's be clear. Senator Franken was accused credibly by 8 women of groping and forcible kissing. 2 of those allegations, all were corroborated in real time. 2 of them were since he was a senator, and the last one that came to light was a congressional staffer. Now, I'm a mother of boys, and I was talking to my oldest son, Theo, at home, and he said, "Mom, why are you so tough on Al Franken?" And I said, "Theo, it's not okay to grope a woman anywhere on her body without her consent. It's not okay to forcibly kiss a woman ever without her consent. It's not okay for Senator Franken, and it's not okay for you." Now, I needed to have clarity on that, and I was not going to remain silent. I couldn't defend it, and I wasn't going to defend it. That was my decision. Senator Franken's decision is whether or not he wanted to resign, whether he wanted to wait to his next election. But if a few Democratic donors are angry, because I stood by 8 women, including a young woman who works in Congress, that's on them.
You have also taken heat because at one point during this whole controversy, you said that you believed, looking back, that Bill Clinton should have resigned for his actions during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. And as you know, some people in the Clinton team said, gee, you were very comfortable with Bill Clinton when you took Hillary Clinton's position in the Senate and had the support of the Clintons. And this, in effect, they accuse you of being an opportunist.
Yeah. Well, I was pretty clear on that issue. But all of these questions that we're talking about today, Chris, are really going to this issue of do we value women? Because it's not about any one person. It's not about any one industry. It's about all of us. And what the Me Too movement has been about is creating space for men and women to come forward, to tell their truth, and to have maybe some possibility at justice. And so I've been working my entire 12 years in public life to value women, to allow their voices to come to the fore politically, but also in society and in the economy. So I've led the movement on making sure we end sexual violence in the military. I've led the movement on trying to end sexual assault on college campuses. I have led the issue to change how we deal with sexual harassment in Congress itself, and was part of a group that passed a bill on a bipartisan basis unanimously this year. And so I have led on these issues because I think this country needs to value women. It's why I also lead on equal pay for equal work and a national paid leave plan so we can value them in the economy, so they can earn at their fullest potential. But that's what all of these issues are. And we have to begin to recognize that when we hold women back, when we don't value them, it holds back the whole country.
Senator, our next question comes from Susan Herrig, who is a retired nurse, not news. Susan.
Thank you, Chris. As Chris said, I am a retired nurse, pediatrics actually, so I dealt quite a bit with preemies. What I'm asking you, Senator, is what is your position on late-term abortion or last trimester abortions?
Well, thank you for serving our community and helping our babies, particularly our preemies who deeply need the medical care they have. My view on women's reproductive freedom is that it should be a woman's decision to make these most intimate life and death decisions for themselves. A woman should be able to decide when she's having children, how many children she's having, and under what circumstances she's having. And what we have created, unfortunately, is a false choice and a false narrative. And Chris, I want to talk about the role that Fox News plays in this because it's a problem. I can tell you, before President Trump gave his State of the Union, Fox News talked about infanticide. Infanticide doesn't exist.
Senator, I just want to say we brought you here for an hour. We have given you, we're treating you very fairly. I understand that maybe to make your credentials with the Democrats who are not appearing on Fox News, you're going to attack us. I'm not sure it's frankly very polite when we've invited you to be here.
I will do it in a polite way, but it's to her point.
Well, I just think, why don't we instead of talking about Fox News, why don't you answer Susan's question?
The debate about whether or not women should have reproductive freedom has turned into a red herring debate. And what happens on Fox News is relevant because they talked about infanticide for 6.5 hours. 6.5 hours, right before President Trump's State of the Union. Mentioned it 35 times. That is not the debate of what access to reproductive care is in this country. It doesn't happen. It's illegal. It's not a fact. And I believe all of us have a responsibility to talk about the facts. The facts are that women in this country have had a constitutional right for over 30 years to make this fundamental life and death decision. And this president has emboldened legislatures in 30 states to begin to criminalize that decision. Criminalize the decision of whether or not and when you want to have your children. Criminalizing the doctors with a 99-year sentence if they are offering abortion services and providing the care that women need. Why should male legislatures across this country decide when you're having children, how many your children are having, and under what circumstances. I don't understand it. It's a human right. It's about having bodily autonomy. It's about being able to control your physical self. It's undermining every human right, civil right that we could have. So let women make these most personal decisions. For many people, it's a moral decision. For many people, it's a medical decision. So why can't they make it with their doctor, with their families, with their husband, based on their own faith, how they believe and what they feel? It is that woman's right.
Actually, this is a town hall.
Come on back.
So let me ask, Susan, are you
ahead.
satisfied with that answer?
Are you saying also then for late term?
So I support Roe v. Wade, okay? Roe v. Wade is the settled Supreme Court precedent that decides the entire issue. And so I support Roe v. Wade. I believe it should be codified. It's been law of the land for over 30 years. It should be law of the land. As President of the United States, I'm going to do 4 things. First, I will not appoint a justice who doesn't see Roe v. Wade as precedent, settled law. Second, I will codify Roe v. Wade, so it is forever law of the land. Third, I will repeal the Hyde Amendment. It's the amendment in law that makes it impossible for low-income women to access the care they need. And fourth, I will make sure no matter what state you live in, you have access to reproductive care, including abortion services.
Senator, I want to ask you about your first statement there, which is that you will only appoint, and you've in effect said, I'm going to have a litmus test.
Yep.
I will only appoint judges who will uphold Roe v. Wade. Now, does that mean that you're okay with other presidents having their own litmus tests? Maybe a pro-life president might say, I'll only appoint people who will overturn Roe v. Wade, because the tradition in this country has been independence of the judiciary and the idea that a judge, once appointed, will judge each case on its merits and not on the basis of a promise made,
right,
a political promise,
right,
to get that position.
So,
and you seem to be saying,
yep,
there's going to be a litmus test.
I think it's changed. That's the way it used to be before President Trump. President Trump said he would only appoint judges that would overturn Roe v. Wade, said it in his campaign, and in fact, he gave everybody a list of 20 judges that were pre-approved to make sure they were anti-choice, anti-LGBT rights, and many other things. So he already did it, and then he's doing it. But the rules have changed, because when Mitch McConnell stole a justice from President Obama for political reasons, not allowing a hearing on Merrick Garland or a vote on Merrick Garland, he did that purposefully to steal a justice, okay? Second, both Kavanaugh and Gorsuch said in their hearings that they saw Roe v. Wade as settled precedent. Let's see what happens soon. I got to tell you, this has been an all-out assault by the president, by these Republican legislatures in 30 states, to overturn Roe and to take away women's reproductive freedom and basic human rights.